Today, the commander of India's Strategic Eastern Command has gone on record to say that China has stepped up activity in the eastern sector, specifically across Arunachal Pradesh. That the PLA continues its major infra push all along the LAC is no secret, building helipads, upgrading air bases facing India, deploying the S-400, broadening its roads, building bridges. We know that is happening. The signal is clear. We are building up for battle if it comes to that. But the threat from China is not just on land or sea. China's cyber offensive against India is gathering strength as well. On the show today, as we look at India's counter build-up in Arunachal Pradesh, we are also trying to understand how China is using its cyber army to achieve its geopolitical objectives. Helping us demystify the threat landscape is Christopher Ahlberg. He is the CEO of Recorded Future, a firm that deals with cyber threat intelligence for governments and firms across the world. But first, let's look at the counter build-up India has put in place in Arunachal Pradesh. A month after 200 PLA soldiers entered Indian territory in Tawang and were confronted by the army, the commander of the Strategic Eastern Command has confirmed China's stepped-up activity in the eastern sector. The number of exercise, troops and their habitat have all increased, he says, in the last few months.
We have observed some infrastructure development on the Chinese side close to the LAC in terms of essentially habitat, and that has led to correspondingly more number of troops that are now located or placed there.
China's massive infrastructure build-up all across the 3,488-kilometer LAC is no secret. India is responding in kind, betting heavily on technology rather than adding more troops on the ground in Arunachal Pradesh. To keep track of PLA movement, not just at the border, but even deep inside enemy territory, a range of cameras, sensors, radars, motion detectors, satellite imagery, and drones, all controlled by an indigenous artificial intelligence software, have been deployed. The star of India's Eye in the Sky team are these Heron drones from Israel, stationed at the Misamari Aviation Base in Assam. These birds constantly keep a watch at the border from a cool 30,000 feet. In mountainous areas where the weather packs up in a matter of minutes, herons are godsend. They can monitor movement in bad weather at night and can provide a live feed up to 250 kilometers away.
ये वो एक एयरक्राफ्ट है जो आपका लेमन लैंग्वेज में जो आपका एक कैमरा लेकर एक डायरेक्शन से दूसरी डायरेक्शन में जहां पर हम बैठे हैं यहां से 200 से 250 किलोमीटर दूर जाकर हमें कंटिन्यूअस एक वीडियो फीड दे सकता है.
These Herons will eventually be upgraded and armed with missiles for precision strikes under Project Cheetah. The army has also established its first aviation brigade in Arunachal Pradesh's Rupa. At this surveillance room, trained men keep a hawk's eye not just on India's airspace, but also monitor air movement on the other side. Colonel Navneet Chel, who heads this center, says the base will prevent any Taiwan-like Chinese misadventures.
जब भी कोई हॉस्टाइल थ्रेट जनरेट होता है तो अगर वो फाइटर का थ्रेट है तो एयरफोर्स उसको रिएक्ट करती है. अगर वो लो लेवल थ्रेट आ रहा है वैलीज के थ्रू, अटैक हेप्टर्स आ रहे हैं दुश्मन के, तो उसके कारण एविएशन ब्रिगेड के पास एसेट्स है जो एकदम से डिप्लॉय हो जाते हैं. हमारा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फॉरवर्ड एरियाज में बहुत अच्छा है. फॉरवर्ड एविएशन बेसिस हमने बनाए हुए हैं पूरे अपने ऑपरेशनल एरिया में, और जिसके कारण हम जल्दी से जल्दी उस थ्रेट के अगेंस्ट रिएक्ट कर सकते हैं.
Meanwhile, the standoff in eastern Ladakh continues for 20 straight months. The 13th Corps Commander level talks have flopped, with the Chinese simply refusing to take the disengagement process forward. As we speak, 50 to 60,000 Indian troops are gearing up to spend another bitter winter in the treacherous heights of Ladakh, standing like a wall to protect flag and country. With Natasha Menden and Sandeep Bol, I'm Shreya Dhondial. Meanwhile, China is amping up its nuclear arsenal as well. They took the world by surprise when they tested a nuclear-capable hypersonic missile that can reportedly circle the globe. China, of course, has called it a peaceful spacecraft launch. But fact is, it is a warning by Beijing to the world.
U.S. officials tonight closely monitoring China's missile program, following a report of a possibly ominous missile test. The Financial Times, citing unnamed sources briefed on the intelligence, reports China tested a nuclear-capable hypersonic missile in August. The report says the missile circled the Earth before speeding toward its target, demonstrating an advanced capability in space that, quote, caught U.S. intelligence by surprise. Today, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, while not commenting specifically on the Financial Times report, said this.
We watch closely China's development of armament and advanced capabilities and systems that will only increase tensions in the region.
China denies testing a hypersonic missile, saying the test was a, quote, routine spacecraft experiment and implying it was for civilian purposes. But analysts say if the report is correct, China's not only got a missile that can fly at 5 times the speed of sound and is more maneuverable than a standard ballistic missile.
Because they're fast and they can avoid detection, they can decrease the amount of warning time we have and the amount of decision time that leaders have to respond in a crisis if hypersonic weapons are used.
The idea that China might have fired a rocket into full orbit with this missile on it is disturbing to experts.
If that's true, then we now have to start worrying about whether every Chinese satellite might not, in fact, be a disguised nuclear warhead. This is a very, very destabilizing development.
This summer, it was reported that China began construction of what experts said were more than 100 new silos for intercontinental ballistic missiles in a western desert of China. But China's not alone in developing hypersonic missiles. The U.S. and Russia are also working on them. And recently, Kim Jong-un's regime claimed North Korea test-fired a hypersonic missile with a warhead that could detach and glide.
Now, over the last 10 minutes or so, we have looked at the conventional and hypersonic capabilities that Beijing is building. But China is also investing big money and resources to build its cyber army. I spoke to the CEO of Recorded Future to understand the threat landscape that China has presented to the world. Christopher, thank you very much for your time here on CNN News 18. A lot of work that you do is China-centric. Could you tell us what is the threat landscape that we are really looking at as far as cyber espionage / cyber warfare is concerned?
So if you think about it, so cyber has sort of become this new vector of call it it's sort of intrusions at large. And you think about it, there's sort of two big pieces. One is to steal money, one is to steal secrets, and maybe there is a potential for actual destruction in the future. And so the threat landscape include that. There's people who are trying to steal money. We're primarily seeing that out of Russian criminals. And then it's about stealing secrets, and that's where we've seen the dear Chinese, doing this and that over the last, 10, 20 years.
What exactly is it that China is trying to do?
So I think there's sort of two main things you can think about here. One is from driving their economy. They have a goal from the CCP, the Communist Party, of growing 7% per year or something like that. That's basically impossible to do without stealing intellectual property. So they've had a mass project to steal intellectual property around the world. A lot of it obviously out of Europe and out of the US, maybe primarily out of the US. There's not by random that every new Chinese fighter jet you see looks like a damn copy out of a American fighter jet. So that's one piece, stealing intellectual property. The other one is getting ready for war. So, and if you want to get ready for war, you want to pre-position malware in systems around the world. You want to be able to build databases of your opponents, be it officers, intelligence officers, these sort of things. And they've had sort of a mass campaign, scaled effort to do that as well.
How does it work? What is the hierarchy? Is it state-sponsored? Are these lone wolf, campaigns? How does this work?
So you sort of have two main agencies that does this in China. One is the Strategic Support Forces under the PLA, so PLA-SSF. The other piece is the Ministry of State Security. There are other pieces as well, but those are the two key pieces. They operate a little bit separately, so PLA tend to run their own units. So when we, for example, recently called out how a bunch of Indian institutions had been hacked by the Chinese. It was done by this piece we called Red Foxtrot, which is out of Xinjiang province, in a particular unit 69010, Chinese unit run by the PLA. The MSS tends to operate out of call them independent contractors, sometimes tied to universities, sometimes tied to supercomputing centers, or sometimes separate companies. So there's been famous example like Boysec, these sort of companies that they run as pen testing firms, so penetration testing firms that claim to do ordinary information security work, but in reality they're doing work on the behalf of the government. And so again, MSS PLA operates a little bit differently. The typical Chinese operations are not lone wolf. It's typically run by larger groups.
Mm-hmm. So, we are often told that future wars will be fought in cyberspace. Could you tell us, as far as India is concerned, what are the sectors that have been targeted? You've done extensive work on that. And what are the potential sectors that India should be looking out for as far as Chinese espionage is concerned?
So first of all, I think the important part on a future war that involves cyber is that it's going to be hybrid. Yeah. It's going to involve classic warfare. It's going to involve, if you want cyber warfare, whether that's espionage or destroying things, and influence operations. Very, very key component. Then to your second question, when the sectors that we've observed mostly is obviously going after government entities, going after defense sector, and going after telecommunications. And it makes sense. If you're going to try to steal secrets, you're going to do that from the government. You're going to go after defense industry because you want to steal information from understanding the capability of the adversary, which is what the Chinese are doing. And telecommunications ends up being a place to either go steal other sort of information, is sort of a conduit on the way there, and sometimes to actually go get information straight from those telecom companies. But those are the biggest sectors, but they've also gone after many other sectors. But those would be the three most highest.
Could you name them for us? I believe BSNL was on target, HAL, Hindustan Aeronautical Limited, was on target as well?
Yeah, no, they've gone after a whole bunch of again, government entities, defense contractors, and telecommunication companies.
But most of these companies will say we are well protected, we have a wall. Then how have the Chinese managed to infiltrate?
So first of all, it's sort of an illusion, this idea of a wall. So as you know, all companies, doesn't matter, your company, governments are now moving into a digital world where they put sort of digital transformation. Everything goes online. So with that, number one, now the wall goes away. There probably never was a wall to begin with, but now things get sort of spread out across the internet. So there just is no wall. Number two, I think too many people are too cocky, to use an American speak, and sort of not humble enough, because there are always holes. The question is just, do you know the holes better, or does the adversary know the holes better? And unfortunately, the adversary he just keeps looking and looking and looking. He just needs to find one hole at one time. If you're some Chinese MSS outfit or PLA outfit who has the job to go after this one Indian defense contractor, the job is specific, and they're happy to wait 2 years to get in. So they just need to wait for any one time during those 2 years for there to be a hole, and they constantly scan it, and when they see it, boom, they'll go in.
Okay, help me understand. One will understand why China or Chinese firms will be interested in, say, an HAL, which is a defense contract, or defense contractors. Yeah. But why, say, the energy sector?
So the energy sector you could imagine for two different reasons, or probably many more, but I would use two. One is, again, the work we did around Red Echo, where they pre-positioned malware into dispatch centers across India. You could do that for simplistically two reasons. I would say probably turn it into more, but we'll say two. Either because you're pre-positioning malware that you want to be able to destroy power infrastructure or disrupt power infrastructure at time of war. That's one. Number two, you just want to send a signal that you can. You just want to mess with the opponent, just to get them to be afraid. That's sort of signaling or, preparation, so pre-positioning. The other part of it is, why go after energy companies are some of the most hacked companies around the whole world. And that's actually just from an intellectual property point of view. Everybody wants to get their hands on oil fields. So, Indian oil companies probably have all kinds of information on where they're finding oil around the world. Or it could be their own or in joint ventures and these sort of things. So if I was China, I want to find that information, use it on my own. Maybe I want to sell it to or give it to my own oil companies. Oil companies are being hacked all day, every day.
Could you list for us some of the major campaigns that China has launched as far as cyber attacks are concerned or cyber espionage is concerned?
So it really is sort of, we just sort of pulled together recently looked at over the last 2 years. We found 60 attacks that we've identified ourselves, or campaigns, attacks, whatever you want to call them. So 60 over the last 2 years, and that are both originating from the PLA and the MSS. And what sort of stands out for me is that 60, that's a fair amount. And these are, takes time and effort on the Chinese side to do this. This is not just a single little sort of intrusion. It's something that means that you're doing one every other week over 2 years. And we're probably only seeing a portion of it. So these guys are quite active. And this involves going after, again, power infrastructure, going after defense contractors, banks, the whole shebang. So it's high activity.
India and China, our relationship is at an all-time low. We've had a standoff in eastern Ladakh for the last 20 months. Over this period, have you seen increased Chinese cyber activity directed against India? Has there been an uptick?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we saw that last summer, and when the activities was going on at the Pangong Lake area, that the intrusions into the power infrastructure, likely happened at that time. It is hard to know, were they there before? It becomes sort of an impossibility to. But if we just to actually 100% say that. But when we look at the observations we're doing, and actually you can see it in sort of the emails that we've been sending to the, for notification to Indian authorities, because we try to be very good about communicating what we're observing. The total uptick, around and after that, the Pangong Lake activities.
On that note, I'm taking a very quick break. Up next, I'm asking Christopher Ahlberg about China's digital colonization of Africa. That is coming up next. Do stay with us. And I believe a big push at this digital colonization is also towards Africa, where China has big investments. What are they trying to do there?
So, in general, China needs resources. All countries need resources, but maybe China needs it even more. They have some resources inside their country, but they also know that Africa is a place where they can get to a lot of it. They also have complete willingness to work with a lot of people that we would not, as whether it's India or the United States, would not want to work with, because there are some, I will just say all-out dictators that we would not want to do business with. China is quite happy to do business there. So and so that means that if you ask again, why would they want to get into oil companies? Probably that. Can they figure out where if other people have found resources in Africa, they may want to get to that. So so now as they're building out, they call it their digital or the Belt and Road Initiative. There is also a digital Belt and Road Initiative that is sort of about shaping the world's minds, if you want, both at the individual and a national and international level to a benefit of China. That's what they're doing, and there's a long-term plan there. In Africa, they want to see as their backyard. They built a big base in Djibouti, that now it's been established that they can take aircraft carrier to land at this base. If you just go on Google Maps and look at the the southern part of the harbor of Djibouti. It's bananas when you see it. We've gotten our hands on video that right from the front gates of it. It's a major, it's not a tiny thing what they built. It's incredible.
So how does it work? Again, every time they're selling equipment to, say, an African nation, or they are putting some sort of infrastructure there, are you saying it's embedded, there is something there which will relay information back in?
So I think this is what, you have to be a little bit more, it's more subtle than that. So first of all, for the majority of it is this, if you're a big investor into a country, you get influence. That's number one. That's what China has done in Pakistan. That's what they're doing in Africa, and so on. They try to be a good investor, and I don't think they have malicious sort of intent about every little thing they're doing on the inverse. They have their objectives and goals and try to find partners that are going to align on those. Then when they try to, Huawei clearly, the Chinese telecom company has had an aggressive sort of plan to put and sponsored by the Chinese government to put in place telecom infrastructure across Africa, across many other places. And it's not necessarily that there's going to be a microphone in every little device everywhere. However, what's important to know is that, and so that there's been a lot of debate about, are there backdoors in these things or not, and so on. It's not so much if there is a backdoor. The key thing is that it was built by Chinese engineers working in Chinese companies, so they have the full blueprint to how it works. So if they at a future time want to implant things, now they know how to do it, they may have the software upgrade system. It might be a totally fine, totally legit, totally great in every way there is, but again, they know how to get things into it. And this is not just the thing that Huawei would do. This is, the telecom companies around the world are one of the most sort of telecom equipment companies is one of the most favored targets of any hacker of any country. But that doesn't mean that we, as the free world, should accept then to have Chinese infrastructure there. It's bananas to have Huawei infrastructure in your country. Bananas. How about that?
Christopher, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thank you so much.